I'm
having some trouble to share my screen right now. It's not clicking.
Not agreeing.
No.
There it goes.
Right, try now.
Yeah, that will help.
All right, excellent.
All right. Can everyone see that?
Yep. Can you put it into the presentation mode? I think that's.
Yep. All right.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. So welcome everyone. I think we have everyone. I just want to do a quick technical check. Michelle, can you hear us? If you want to see if you can speak, you should be able to hit unmute and speak. There should be an option on the phone as well. All right, not hearing from Michelle. So Michelle, I will look at the directions and send you a quick email just in case. So welcome everyone. We are going to get started. We have a pretty light agenda today. The focus is really just to get to know everyone. We have, I think, everyone here tonight except for one.
Yeah, I don't see Jack.
Oh, so we're missing two then. It is school vacation week, so I'm actually really impressed that we have this many people. I'll double check that if I had heard from Jack, just in case. So, Nick, do you mind jumping to the next slide?
Okay.
All right. So, as I was saying, we have a relatively light agenda, and I do want to just mention that we are recording tonight. Our focus really is just to cover some logistics and basics, and then start to brainstorm for what the next few months could look like and how we can work with the community on this project. So Nick, if you could jump to the next one. Just because GoToWebinar is a bit unique, and it may not look exactly like Zoom or other services you might have used in the past. On the toolbar, what you'll see is our options. The most important ones are the ones at the top, all the way on the left of that toolbar. The minimize, which basically will close things up if you don't want to look at the majority of it. Mute, video on or off, that's that one that looks like a camcorder, and share screen. There are some other more advanced options. We probably won't really be using those, but they exist as options, and we'll consider them as we move on. When we do larger community events, we are going to plan to use the city Zoom account. We only have one, so we have to share with all the various evening meetings. But when Zoom does have a lot more interactive features that are possible, so that will help make our virtual meetings a little bit more convivial and lively for everyone who's attending. And we are looking at other tools as well. We don't have any attendees in the audience tonight as of yet. That doesn't mean there couldn't be later. But when we do have attendees in the audience, what's nice about this service is that there is a raise hand function and an option to type in questions, so we can hear directly from public attendees as well. Next one, Nick. So the first sort of third of this meeting, we wanted to sort of hand off to everyone and do a round of introductions. And so we had sort of a kind of brief intro piece. I know a lot of folks have already met some people, but they haven't met everyone. And so we wanted to give a chance to meet everyone. We are, of course, missing a couple people, and so we'll do introductions with them when they join next time. So the first questions here are just name, how would you typically spend an afternoon in Gilman Square, and one thing you're hoping to talk about with the group. I can kick things off. Or actually, Counselor, do you want to kick things off? Counselors Klingon and Ewan Campen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. My name is Jesse Klingon. I'm Ward 4 City Councilor. I represent Ward 4 and our great council, which includes part of Gilman Square, which I share with my good colleague from Ward 3, as well as Winter Hill, right down to Mystic Ave, Fellsway West. It's my pleasure to be here. You know, Gilman Square, as I said to some of you in the interviews, that it technically doesn't exist as a square in Somerville. You know, we have a number of squares that people know about. And when people started to call this area Gilman Square, and they had the train stop Gilman Square, and then when I realized just the sort of central location it has to our city government, our new high school, our central branch library, I could see the possibilities of what could be what is a great square now. How much more sort of enjoyable, functional of a place, a destination place to go. So that's kind of, I guess I jumped to the second thing. That's what I'm hoping to talk about in this committee. I want to do that in the most equitable way possible with as many voices at the table. So that's why we created this CAC in hopes that all of us can sort of put our tentacles out into the community, and we can get a sort of a really broad idea of what that means to everybody. How I typically spend a day in the afternoon in the neighborhood, probably just walking. Typically, I'll walk the ward every now and then. I do have a dog now, so I do plan on walking down to Ed Leather's park. And sadly to say, I don't usually get gas there, but we do have a few gas stations currently. But mainly just the walking and stopping up at Tipping Cow for some ice cream, and maybe making my way down to just walk down Pearl Street and down Walnut, just kind of taking the air. It's a great, Walnut's especially, it's a really nice street. It's a really nice area. So I think this is going to be a great addition to the area. Ben, take it away. Now we can see you, but we can't hear you. Okay.
Hey everybody, I think I've met some of you, but certainly not all of you. I'm Ben Ewan Campen. I'm the Ward 3 City Councilor, and I'm very excited about this group. It's a pretty rare situation where the city actually owns a piece of land right next to one of the new train stations, and it gives us, I think, a really kind of unique opportunity to do things that wouldn't ordinarily be possible with just private developers proposing their normal projects. We kind of have an extra hook into this process to really make it something that we all want to see. So I'm very excited to get to work with all of you, and I'm really thankful that you've all volunteered for this. We have a 14-month-old now who goes to daycare on Highland and Central, so we often take the long way around when we're walking back. I live basically near Union Square, so we'll often walk through Gilman Square, and now that we can walk up School Street, I like going that way and looking at the tracks, construction stuff. That's it for me.
Counselor, do you want to popcorn that to somebody?
Sure. Next to me on my screen is Diana Marsh.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I live on Madison Street, just about half a block behind City Hall, and I work at home, so I'm here all the time, and I often go out just to kind of walk around the block because I'm going stir crazy, or a lot of times I'll walk down to the library to get a book with my daughter, and we like to go look at the construction and the Green Line and the high school. And I'm an urban planner, so I like looking at buildings and transit and projects and things like that. And in the evening, we like to go to Highland Kitchen when it's been open, and One thing I'm hoping to talk about is I know that the YMCA is looking for a new place to move to, and I don't know whether, you know, I imagine they have some ideas already, but I thought Gilman Square would be really awesome if we could have a YMCA with a big swimming pool that the high school students could use, and a gym, and, you know, whatever housing the YMCA might provide, and then, you know, it would give it continue the civic flavor of the city hall and everything, and it would be a central location that everybody could take advantage of. So I'd love to talk about that.
And just pick the next person.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh. Let's see. How about Casey Babbitt?
Hello, everyone. My name is Casey. I live on Pearl Street. I also like to walk around a lot. I guess that's going to be a theme, but I like to do a loop when I can get out during the workday, since I'm also at home these days. Like go down all the way down past like Tipping Cow and the train station, and like go on the bike path, or if I have less time, I'll just walk down Walnut Street and maybe go on Highland or to Prospect Hill Park. So I just like exploring. Sometimes I'll grab a coffee. And I'm excited. I think what folks have said resonate with me, but I would just add, I'm excited about what we're going to talk about related to the train station, and what kind of opportunities and potential like risks we see with the train station, and sort of how we as a community want to navigate that, because it's exciting and also brings a lot of change. So I'm excited to get to know everyone and to start chatting through all of these important issues. And I'll pass things over to Melinda.
Hi, I am Melinda Conies, and I live on House Street, which is between School and Marshall. Presumably everybody knows that already. I have been in my house here on House Street for about 20 years. Before that, I lived kind of more central, and then before that, I was in Union Square for a few years. So I've been in Somerville about 30 years. Let me see, I have a dog. It's been my goal and my neighbor's goal. We try to walk every street in Somerville with our dogs. So I do take a lot of long walks. And I have to say, it's lovely to come upon a street in Somerville where there's virtually no traffic, and that's, you know, quiet. And so as much as I'm excited about the change in this area, I never really minded living kind of off the beaten path of all the busy squares that are in Somerville. So I'll just put that out there as the flip side for the excitement over change. But I'm not averse to change. So yeah, I'm also pretty easygoing about change. I'm adaptable, so I don't have a lot of, you know, this must happen, I want this to happen, but I'm eager to hear what everybody else wants and thinks should happen, and to help facilitate. I have a lot of neighbors that I know are marginally engaged in some of the vision and the conversation, so I'm hoping that I can help to kind of reach those people and get their voice out there. And I'll pass it on to James.
Thank you. It's funny because everybody's telling us where we're going, and my contribution to this committee is going to be where we're from, because Dr. Frank Champa delivered me in Somerville 63 years ago. That's why there's a Frank Champa Manor in Davis Square named after him. He delivered a lot of us kids. And then fast forward to my 7th grade, I had Tom Galligani as my 7th grade teacher, who made a big difference in my life, being the father of the Tom Galligani on this committee. So I feel like I really want to put that contribution in, and what Somerville was. As to what I do every day in Gilman Square, well, I work there. I've been there since the early 90s. Every day I'm in Gilman Square, including Sundays. So sort of my church. So I sort of know, you know, the area pretty well. And do I like the where it's going? Absolutely. I love the slogan, put the square back in Gilman Square. I love it because there is no square. I entertain a lot of customers. I would love to have places to say, hey, let's go here, go there. Ever since the paddock closed, we have no lunch places. So obviously Summer's an awesome restaurant, but it's not, you know, a regular restaurant. So that's some of my vision. But I also want to protect what, you know, what is there that has been there and wants to stay there. And obviously I'm biased to my business. I've been there for a very, very long time. Those of you who don't know, I own the piano business in that beautiful historic building right across from the T. So, so there it is. I think I can make that contribution, and I plan to now that I've been asked to be on this committee. And I look forward to someday talking to Tom Galligani and telling him how his father made a huge difference in my life. His father, the monument should be made to him. He was, I grew up in Southern Junior High School, which is a dog park now, but it was a rough and tumble, you know, situation back when I grew up in the 70s. And I think he made a difference in a lot of people's lives. So just a little kudos for Tom to tell his father. I still remember him fondly and thank him very much for, you know, making a contribution to my life. But anyway, I pass it on. I don't have my glasses on. Let me see who I can pass this baton to.
James, while you're looking for the next person, we will definitely get Tom here so you can tell him that directly, because that's a cool story.
You mean Tom's father?
We'll get, well, at least Tom the younger.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. It said Tom Galliani. I didn't know if that was him. That's not him.
No, yeah, it was when city staff joined, we all show up as Tom first. And so
okay.
My colleague Nick showed up as Tom.
Yeah, no, it is not. His father was an amazing educator in Somerville, and he dealt with some really tough kids, and he made a difference. Anyway, I'll pass it on. I don't have any names here, so I don't know where are the names that I don't see names for me to pass it on to.
I can jump in and help if that's useful.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just to sort of pass it on.
Sure. Why don't we go to Jamie next?
Which would have been my choice, actually.
Thank you. I'm honored. You can all hear me okay, right? Okay, great. I'm Jamie, and my typical afternoon in Gilman Square, if I'm there, is I'm working because that's where my office is. I also live in Somerville, just a little bit further from the square, but another good way that I spend time there while we were working earlier this week on one of the really nice balmy days, a couple of my coworkers and I took a break over at the Winter Hill Community School, like playground and courts there. Shot some hoops on the basketball court, which is not really my forte at all, but was happy to go along for a bit. And I really enjoy, you know, my walks to and from work. I stick on the path as much as I can. And so I'm excited for the community path to extend all the way there. And I love stopping at like neighborhood produce on the way home for you know, dinner items from there. Yeah, so I'm really excited about the sort of extension of the, you know, biking and community path, as well as sort of the types of, you know, kind of multi-use buildings that, you know, might, you know, pop up or be planned in the area. And I will send it over to Brittany.
Hi, I'm Brittany Vetter. I live on Bradley Street. We've only been here for 2 years, but we hope to be here for the long haul. I am a middle school teacher in Chelsea. In terms of how I spend my time in the area, I have a 1 and a 3-year-old, so we spend a lot of time at Marshall Street Playground. It's a great like contained space that's perfect size for them to just run around. So as soon as it reopened after the initial few months of COVID, we were there on a very regular basis. We also are big fans of the construction, all the excavators and whatnot, so we do stop by the construction site often. in terms of what I'm excited about, I just hope that we can find a way to create a square and a space where it can be a community gathering place and as many people as possible in the area can be able to access it and utilize it. I'll pass it off to Ram.
Thank you, Brittany. My name's Ram Kielat. I live on Oxford Street, which is runs between School and Central, just over the hill from Highland. We've been here for a while. My daughter is a lifelong Somervillian. She's off at college. She graduated Highland, the high school class of 2017. So this morning I went down to the YMCA to work out, and I asked the people at the front desk how their site search was going. They didn't have anything to offer there, but it seems like one they might be able to do something with some of the land that's coming up. And the afternoon I went down to I made my way through the construction equipment that's building the VFW, building the new apartment building where the VFW used to be, and went down to the neighborhood, picked up some things there. On another afternoon, I might go to the library. So I like walking around the neighborhood, and then that's how I came across the little sign on the ground somewhere next to the high school that said the CAC was looking for people. So that's how come I'm here. I was also hoping to talk about the YMCA, and another thing I'm interested in is if anybody has any updates on the schedule for when trains will actually start running to Gilman Square.
There is an update as of today.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they made an announcement in the Boston Globe today. So there's an official date for Leechmere and for Union Square, and that is March 21st. So at least the buses, when you get to Leechmere, it's no longer a shuttle. There'll be the Green Line at Leechmere. For the rest of the line, what they said is it's likely to shift into summer without a specific date. So I think, we've been hearing late March, weather dependent, and so it's really exciting that they've landed on a date for the first piece because that means that we're making progress. So that's all on the Globe as of 4 o'clock.
I think Jennifer hasn't gone, or is that right? So handing over to Jennifer.
Great, thank you, Ram. My name is Jennifer Korber, and I am both a resident and an artist in the area. I live on Highland, actually right across the street from the YMCA, and I work at the Mad Oyster Studios over on Bradley Street. And so my husband and I moved to Somerville about 6.5 years ago, and we have had friends in the neighborhood for decades before that. So we've been coming to Somerville a lot and off for the last 20 years. So it was a goal for us to live in Somerville and be part of this community. And because I both live and work in the area, I very much wanted to be a part of this community group, and I'm thrilled that I'm here. What I actually wanted to talk about, hoping to talk about, is something I've brought up both in my interview and also with Rachel separately, is food. It's not actually food scarcity. We're not a food desert around here, but it is a substantial haul for anybody on foot to get to a grocery store. They either have to, particularly now that once the Star Market on Winter Hill closed, it's either the Stop and Shop on McGrath, the Market Basket on Somerville Ave, or for any of the larger kind of multi-purpose supermarkets, groceries. There are definitely lots of smaller markets. I had a quick education when I was confirming my thoughts on this. It's about what is all there, including definitely neighborhood produce and the places up on Broadway. But as far as a multi-purpose, general purpose grocery store, there just isn't one without either having to cross a highway or go up over Central Hill. And so I'm hoping that either something like the Bee Fresh in Davis, though maybe not that particular company, or something like a Trader Joe's, or anything of that size might do well in that area. But also something that's more like the Boston Public Market, where it's lots of smaller venues. So maybe invite Neighborhood Produce to move their Gilman Square location over into that space. Maybe have a coffee shop in there. That's another thing that there isn't around here. I definitely agree with James on needing more restaurants, because it's either Sarma or Highland Kitchen, and that's it. And as much as I love me Highland Kitchen, there's just not that many choices when it comes to particularly daytime food. So those are the things that are foremost in my mind when I volunteered to be on this group. And that's it.
And who next?
Who next? Ben Elgart?
Thank you. Sure. Hi, I'm Ben Elgart. I have a personal interest in being here, but also I am a board member of the Gilman Square Neighborhood Association, soon to be Neighborhood Council. And so I sit as the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging officer. So we really thought in terms of who could represent from the Neighborhood Association, we really did see this as an opportunity to learn more about everyone in our community and make sure that as much as we were hearing from our members what they wanted to see in the community, we wanted to make sure to hear who else was in the community and what their thoughts were as well. So personally, when in the afternoon in the neighborhood, I'm often biking through or walking through to get coffee. I guess by afternoon, I'm walking. It's not Winter Hill Brewery. I'm walking into Bow Market probably. I'm walking back, and I live on Stickney and School in a multifamily with my extended family. And in terms of what I'm hoping to talk about in this committee, like I said, the Gilman Square Neighborhood Association really is excited to learn more from the community. So I definitely see this as a way that we can learn more about the community. And also, we've heard a lot and talked a lot about what members and people that they've talked with want to see in the square. We've definitely contributed to some of those conversations that have been more inclusive and open to the public. Some of the things that I think about personally, it's very hard to meet your neighbors. There aren't a lot of venues to meet new people. I was very devastated with some of the landscaping changes to Central Hill because some of the few times that I actually did meet my neighbors and get to know new people was in the winter when sledding with my nephews right by the library. That is a real bonding experience. Anyone willing to trek through the snow? It was a great hill. Sometimes a hard landing on the parking lot, but definitely worthwhile. And I think there should be more opportunities to meet people. In terms of the development in the Gilman Square. Certainly restaurants, cafes are great venues. If you made it to the block party that Gilman Square Neighborhood Association had, those are also, it's also a great venue. Every day should be a block party in Gilman Square. And I'm really excited to think about other spaces that are inviting for people to meet one another. One of the final thoughts I'll offer is often one of the things we hear is that a lot of members and a lot of people we talk to appreciate the green space that's already in the square. And I really am looking forward to hearing about ways that we can find open space or green space that can be used, that can kind of to maximize on its value. Right now, they're not inviting spaces. And so again, how can we have these be not just green space that's good for the environment and that prevents flooding, but also how can it be, also spaces that we want to meet one another and share time in. So those are just some of the things, but I'm really here also to hear a lot of what the community is saying and what you folks on the panel are thinking as well.
Thanks. Have we missed anyone here? Melinda, did we get you as well? I think yes. I think I was looking at the technical challenges. Great. So I also have Michelle's intro. Michelle is on the phone, which we're finding she can hear everything, but she can't speak. So she's written out her thoughts, and I will copy them into the chat for her, and I will also read them out loud for everyone to hear. So speaking as Michelle, my name is Michelle Moreira, and I live on Medford Street. I spend every afternoon walking my dog in the neighborhood. We generally walk 2 miles a day around the neighborhood, often stopping and speaking with other neighbors out walking. On a nice afternoon, we sit outside and talk to the neighbors walking by. I am also interested in additional restaurants and grocery stores, as well as developing additional green space for the community to be used as civic space. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you putting up with our technical limitations tonight. I want to move to the next things, but I do want to spend a couple of minutes just to introduce ourselves as the staff who are here. Tom has joined us and heard your story, James, so that's great. So I can start from the staff side. My name is Rachel Ned Carney. I am a senior planner in economic development focused on our urban revitalization projects, projects like this one. When I am in Gilman Square, which is quite often, I live not too far, and also, of course, I'm at City Hall pretty often as well. And I generally do a lot of walking up and down the hills for exercise, but also usually exercise ending in ice cream is always better. So visits to neighborhood produce and tipping cow together is a nice destination. One thing I'm hoping to talk about in this group is really hearing everything from everyone here and engaging with all the other neighbors we haven't met yet. I will turn this over to Nick.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Schoenberger. I'm a planner with economic development. I've worked for the city for close to 6 years. And the first, I guess, year and a half was with the Arts Council on Evergreen Ave in Gilman Square. So I was frequenting Thurston Spa. I used to get my hair cut at Matos at the barbershop over there. And more currently with economic development, I'm project managing the city's digital fabrication lab, Fabville, which is housed in the Somerville High School. And so that's open from 3 to 5 for students, and then 5 to 8 to the public for free classes on how to use a laser cutter, 3D printing, using a CNC machine. So lots of fun activities happening over there. And if you haven't been, I invite you all to come and check it out. And yeah, I think I'll stop there and I'll pass it off to Tom.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, I'm Tom Galligani. I'm the Director of Economic Development within the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development. I work with Nick, I work with Rachel. I'm so excited to see all these new faces, eager to get involved. Rachel texted me, she said, you missed the story about your father. So I'll have to catch up with maybe James later on and figure out what that's all about. But it's great to see everybody. My favorite spot in Gilman Square, I'd have to say, I'm working at City Hall. If I need a break, I'm going to wander around outside. I'm going to wander around Gilman Square. Ed Leathers Park is a great place. It's kind of a secret, quiet place, especially on a summer day. Some nice shade trees. I'm sure you all agree. If you have a dog, I'm sure you've hung out there too. Just looking forward to hear what everybody has to say and how they want to see their neighborhood change.
And Jack, thank you so much for joining us. We are just rounding out introductions. And so if you could take a minute and just name how you typically spend an afternoon in the area and something you're excited to talk about with this group.
All right, I'm Jack Lister. I live on School Street. I do have a dog, and I usually go out after supper and walk around the neighborhood with the dog. I'm looking forward to doing something real nice down there in Gilman Square. Some of the ideas that were tossed around at the interview before sounded pretty good as far as having stores and apartments and maybe taking over the mobile station. That's about it.
That's perfect. Thank you. Nick, can you shift to the next slide? Excellent. So we will spend the next little bit going through some of the sort of foundational organizational pieces of the group. We want to check in with everyone on that draft charter we sent around. I already found a couple little things that need to be adjusted just to clarify a couple pieces. We want to talk about the meeting schedule and make sure that this time is working for everyone and if we need to adjust anything. And then also talk about timing for public comment in the course of our meetings. So first off, the draft charter, and I will drop the link to that in the chat if anyone wants to follow along. In just a moment. Here we go. So I want to just sort of highlight a couple aspects of this. And what we want to do with this is really make sure we're all on the same page as to how we're going to work together in this group, particularly because we set this up to really operate on consensus. And so we want to make sure that, you know, even our ground rules we're all in consensus about before we get going. So if you see anything in this that you think needs adjusting, you know, let's talk about it as a group and take it from there. So I just wanted to sort of highlight some of this, some of the pieces of this document. The first section goes through purpose, objective, and scope. Really that our purpose here as a group is going to be to create that forum in which neighborhood perspectives can be collected and shared. The objective is really to make sure that all perspectives are shared. And so as part of that, really thinking about that consensus element and that we're representing in our report outs from the group that we're representing the consensus perspectives and then also the dissenting perspectives. So the folks who don't share the same majority opinion, that those ideas are still recorded so that the decision-making bodies have an understanding of what the conversation was and where those points of disagreement might be. The other thing is that our scope for this group is really limited to those 2-3 parcels on the map, right? And I can pull that up. It's at the end. I don't have it teed up right here, but the home and site, the triangle piece, that's the green, and then the mobile. In the course of the time we're working together, there are definitely going to be other projects that happen in Gilman Square. And what we wanted to do with this group is to sort of say, you know, for now, we're going to be limited to these 3 properties. If, you know, in other projects it makes sense, we'll talk about that as to whether or not it makes sense to add that in, or if there's going to be a parallel process. There is a parallel process happening for the street design. They are going to progress to a certain point and then pause until our process completes. So that is one place that we're sort of setting this up, is that had to move forward because it was on a grant timeline, but they are going to not finalize everything until we move forward. So that's the design for Medford Street and Pearl Street and the layout of sidewalks and crosswalks and things like that. All making sense so far? Seeing some nodding. Great. Nick, can you move to the next one? Section 2 of the document really just goes through how we've structured the group, all the different seats that we have, and then all those criteria for the selection process that we talked about during your interviews. So I just wanted to share out where we are with how this is organized. We do have a couple people filling in alternate roles. And so what that means is, we hope if, we'll do some engagement to see if we can find folks who want to fill those seats from those particular segments of the community. But if we don't find anyone, we hope that the folks who are sitting in those seats now will continue with us as long as they're able. Next one. Section goes through member roles and responsibility, and then section 4 goes through city staff roles and responsibilities. So what we have here, and I think none of this should be unfamiliar, we talked a lot about this one in the interviews, but really the role of the group members is to help gather perspectives from their own networks and then from the public that they might meet. That members are going to be expected to express the range of opinions that they're hearing and not just their own, but if they hear things from others, to bring those to the group. We are looking for members to help with thinking about the design and facilitation of upcoming community meetings. And then the most important thing I think in this is to help synthesize afterwards. So we're going to hear a lot from the public, from the broader community. We're hoping that's upwards of 100+ people. And the hope is that this group is going to help us synthesize that and really distill down to those points of where there seems to be a lot of consensus in places where we need to do a lot more communication. We are expecting that everyone will be attending meetings as much as they can, and that everyone is bringing a constructive mindset to this. Again, we're looking for those consensus points. Next one, Nick. We did want to lay out sort of some general ground rules for meeting organization. This is where if you disagree, please speak up. We would anticipate that we would never actually have conversations with folks about how these go, but we want to sort of lay out our expectations for consensus type meetings. The idea that as much as possible, one person will speak at a time. It's hard, we know, on Zoom to figure that out. Trying not to speak over each other, refrain from raising voices and personal attacks and such, that we'll all do our best to stay on task so that we can end on time. And that includes being concise, and that when there are materials to look at in advance, if there's drafts of reports, that folks will take do their best to read it ahead of time so that we can have a really purposeful discussion when we come together as a group. Feel free to raise your hand or make a motion, wave if you need to, if you want to react to anything that you're seeing, and I'll try and catch you. But otherwise, I'll keep plowing through. So the section 4 goes through city staff responsibilities. That's really for Nick and Tom and myself. We want to make sure you're aware of what we plan to take on. We will do our best to make sure that the meeting process runs smoothly, and that there's opportunities for everyone to participate and engage and give their thoughts, and that we'll look for techniques to make it as fun and engaging as possible. We will prepare meeting summaries, and we'll distribute drafts of those at the following meeting. So we will have a draft summary of what was discussed tonight at our meeting in March for everyone to take a look at. That way, if we misrepresented something you said, or you heard something differently, we want to sort of take the time to catch that so that we're keeping a record that reflects what everyone was hearing. And then lastly, we will be bringing in technical expertise and subject matter experts wherever we can and where we think it will fit and best support. We do have a couple of consultants that will be helping us with this process. So we have HR&A. They are an economic analysis team, and they are going to be working on this project with us. And then we, of course, have city staff who have a lot of expertise in our processes and the regulations that we'll bring in when we need to. And then we'll be posting everything to the website. So recordings of the meetings, the meeting presentations, and the summaries will all go on our project website at Somerville. Next one, Nick. And then this is more of the logistics side of things. We will aim for monthly meetings. As we get deeper into this process, we may not need to meet every month. And so we'll talk about that as we get closer to meetings where, you know, we need to go down to once every other month. You know, once we get through the first, you know, core chunk of engagement. We're going to hold these regular meetings in English, but when we do larger community meetings, we will work with our Office of Immigrant Affairs to have multiple languages of interpretation. A piece of this for our language liaisons, Brittany and Michelle, we are not expecting you to be interpreters. And we are not expecting you to, you know, fully engage in your language, but the idea is that in an informal setting, right, that you'll be able to hopefully help someone who might not feel comfortable in English convey their thoughts to the group in Spanish and Portuguese. And so, you know, we'll talk about this when we get to the next meeting, but when we do small breakout groups, what that might look like is that you're sitting with the interpreter and a staff member in a small group setting where folks are engaged in Spanish primarily or in Portuguese primarily. All of our meetings we're going to have open to the public with public comment at meetings, so that as we get into this and folks come and they're like, hey, I've got a concern about construction, or I've got a concern about, you know, what the tenant mix is going to look like, there's an opportunity for them on a routine basis to come and bring their perspectives to the group. And then on the sort of logistical side, we will try and keep all substantive conversation about ideas here in these meetings. That way we're as transparent as possible to the folks who are listening in from the broader public, but that will communicate with you all around logistics and you know, meeting invites and stuff like that, date selection by email. And then the pieces I have here in red are little errors I found that need to be fixed in the draft, but until further notice, we're looking at recording these recorded digital virtual meetings. We will, you know, we're continuing to monitor the options for going back in person and what that might look like. I think getting outside is going to be a real possibility pretty soon. Obviously not this week. There's going to be a bunch of snow, but eventually it will warm up and we'll be able to potentially do some activities outside to get folks engaged in person. And then the other thing is that we had said, you know, 1 to 2 hours, and we are really aiming for that 1.5 hour at the moment, in large part because the counselors have a meeting that falls immediately after this. So wanted to pause and just check in. Does this charter in its current form seem comfortable to folks? That's sort of our operating basis. If there's anything that stands out, let me know. See a thumbs up from Jennifer. Question? Yes.
Yeah, I was. There's a siren going by for someone. It was loud. My question was more around like the page that you flashed with our sort of responsibilities and, you know, collecting feedback from the public, synthesizing it, you know, presenting opinions. Less so on like the what there, but more of the how. So like we're a pretty big group, and like is there sort of a structure that you all have in mind in terms of like how we take on different roles and responsibilities and things like that? I was curious if you had given any thought to that yet.
That is a very good question, and I think we should do some brainstorming on that all together. I'm wondering if there's a way to sort of keep a live log that folks can sort of. I have to look into what how we do this technically, but if there's a way to sort of keep a log that, you know, if you're out and about and you don't want to have to like try and remember it between meetings, if there's a way to jot something down in a digital format. So let me think on that, because I think that is a good idea, Casey. I don't know if that's what you were thinking.
So I do think that's a good idea. I was more thinking around like, you know, we're going to I assume we're going to be responsible for like leading meetings and preparing some kind of like report or presentation, right? And there's a lot of us in this group. So in terms of like, are there people that we want to be primarily responsible for like note taking or like, like just sort of organizing amongst ourselves?
Yeah, so staff will take the majority of that. You all are volunteering your time. So we don't want to give you too much that, we don't want to ask so much of you. Mostly we want to ask of you to take on the roles of being listeners and really having that ear to the ground. But we can, I think it's a good point. We just don't want to give you all so much work outside between meetings.
No, that makes sense. That answer is helpful in and of itself. It just helps clarify the role a little bit.
Yeah, I think the idea is that more in between meetings, it's, as you're out walking the dog or, you run into folks or you're getting together with friends at the park that, there's an opportunity to mention this to people in your networks, share on social media about events that are coming up. And then, we will have actual flyers. That'd be great to have help distributing to neighbors and things like that.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, like 30 eyes and 30 ears are a lot better than 4 or 6, So basically that's, we're just kind of expanding our ability to reach people. So we appreciate you volunteering your time.
Yeah, and
if you want more stuff to do, we can find something. I'm just kidding.
Actually, on that, this is Jennifer. I have a question. So I saw on the list of current members of this group and the roles that they're filling that Ram is here as an alternate for the youth role. Are we still looking for a younger person, and what ages? What like I have friends of mine who live on Winter Hill more have 2 kids who are at Somerville High, but they have friends. Would it be, are we still looking for someone to fill that role? And would a high school student, or are we looking more for young college? Like what's that age range? I missed that part of the recruitment.
Sure, yeah. So we had done recruitment for the youth, and what we landed on was that it's more, we wanted to make sure that we filled the seat as we got started. So we filled it with that, and then also the institutional partner seats with alternates, with the idea that, folks who we had so many people who stepped up willing to make the commitment that we wanted to bring in as many as we could right then and there, with the idea that in a year, we'll, so next February we'll do, like in January, February, we'll do outreach and try and bring somebody in who fits the youth seat. But in the interim, I think, especially given the presence of the high school here, we will do a lot of outreach with youth. And so that's one of the topics we want to talk about with you all is strategizing around that. Like, what can we do to get high school kids engaged in this topic? This is their backyard too, right? They're spending a lot of time here. And they are people who, probably want to be able to buy a sandwich and hang out with their friends.
Yeah, a few of my friends, I'm of an age where 4 high school students among my friends right now, and more on the way in the very near future. So yeah, I'm happy to help with that in any way.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll talk about that. That's one of the things we wanted to sort of brainstorm if we have time tonight. If not, we'll come back to that for sure at our next meeting.
What exactly is the age for youth? What's the cutoff?
We had said 14 to 21.
21, okay.
But yeah, we wanted to honor also the commitment that Ram is making to fill our seat too, and not kick you out right away if we. So hopefully you're able to stick with us, and and also if we find a youth that maybe you'll be able to continue on with us as an audience member generally.
Sounds good to me. I was wondering if I was about to miss a meeting, should I try to get someone else to attend?
Just email us. I think we want to be flexible. We understand life happens. We're starting during February vacation week, so we have one person who's out on vacation right now with their kids. So yeah, if you can't make it, please just email us. If it becomes a recurring thing and it looks like the commitment is not fitting your schedule anymore, we can either look for a different meeting time that works better for the whole group, or we also understand life happens and that folks move, have other commitments in their lives that take them away, and that's understandable. We'll do recruitment if that happens too.
Yeah, I was curious about May. There were 2 meetings, one at the end, and I was wondering if there's like that's a special meeting or if it's just a 4-week kind of thing.
Yeah, let's jump to the schedule. But I wanted to check in on a couple things. So first piece on schedule is, and also just before we move on to that is, I had seen some nodding with the comfort on the charter. Is that still good for everyone? Okay, excellent. We'll call it final and we'll fix those couple errors and put it on the website then. So thank you, Nick, for the next one. So I did want to double check on the calendar here. Does generally 5:30 to 7 on this Thursday of the month work for everyone? I know someone flagged that we land on Thanksgiving with this calendar, so we will fix that one. November will not happen on Thanksgiving. We'll find another week. Does this time generally work? Seeing lots of nodding, excellent. And we will have, sorry. Jump right in.
I would say my workday doesn't always end by 5:30, and if I am still working when this meeting begins, is it okay to join late? Like, what's the proper etiquette for that?
I think if you could just email me just to let us know to keep an eye out for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and Brittany, thanks for that strong preference for ending at 7 for kids' bedtimes too. That work for everyone? We did want to check in on the community meetings. Those are those larger ones, and we understand with the community meetings, they are going to have to be on a day when we don't have a council meeting. And Councilors Klingon and you and Campen also have a hard stop on the 4th Thursday of the month for council. So what we had been looking at was a 6 o'clock start for those, with the understanding that might mean some people have to leave early or other people are going to be joining late, and other people may just not make it at all because it'll be on a off calendar. But as a 6 to 8 time, do you think that works for the folks in the neighborhood? Do you think a 5:30 start works better? 6:30 start?
I think I missed the distinction between our 4th Thursday meeting and the community meeting.
Yeah, so the community meetings are when we do bigger outreach to the broader public for like a real workshop format. And we have 100+ people all on Zoom together and we're really doing the big conversations. Those we expect will need more than an hour and a half. And so they would be on a different time than our regular meetings.
But will all of our 4th Thursday meetings allow for a public comment time? They will. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Councilors, any understanding from your perspective if we do 6 to 8 as our aim? Does that seem like a good timeline for the larger engagements?
Sure.
Okay. Good to know. And we do understand that, Brittany, that will probably mean for you, we might lose you at 7, but we would probably be at that point done with the main piece and moving into the more small group format. Nick, do you want to check in on the next one? Awesome. So the other question is when to do public comment in the course of our meetings, beginning of the meeting, end of the meeting, or both. We have a similar group that we are working with in Winter Hill, and the compromise that they came up with was let's have a 10-minute at the beginning. So folks who want to just come in and say their piece can do it and be done with the evening, and then also a chance at the end so that folks who've been listening can react. So I wanted to throw that out there, that's where we got with the other group, and see if you like that one, preference for beginning or end.
Had they had success with keeping it to a 10 minutes at the beginning? My only concern about the beginning is if it derails the rest of that meeting, for instance.
We'll say we haven't had a meeting with public yet. They're in the same position. They're in the same timeline that you all are, where they just had the organizational meeting, and the next meeting will really be the first with like where there's stuff to
Rachel.
talk about.
So do you have any ideas? It's a good question. Do you have any ideas about how to organize that? I mean, you know, again, if something's hot button, then there may be a bunch of people, but otherwise, you know, 5 people at 2 minutes, like how would we sort of start a stack in a fair way that, you know, people could sign up? Is there, being virtual, it's harder to do that than first come, first serve.
I think what we would do is we would say it absolutely has to be raised hand. That if you wanted to drop something in the written, that you would, we would react to that at the end of the meeting. But if you want to speak verbally, you have to raise a hand, and we would take the first 5 hands. What do you think?
Yeah, so just to add a little bit to what Rachel said, some of the thinking is that we don't, you know, we want to give everybody an opportunity. So, you know, sometimes a meeting kicks off and they might miss, if we had it just at the beginning, they might miss that comment period because maybe nobody was here and we just moved on, and then somebody shows up and they have a burning desire to say something, but they can't stay till the end. So we were thinking, okay, well, you know, but then also, like Rachel said, if people want to react to what we've been talking about, or they maybe just couldn't come, you know, they couldn't come till a little bit later, they'd still have an opportunity to speak. So that was kind of the thinking, but it can be tricky, obviously, with virtual meetings. And I see some, Brittany has a hard out at 7, which I understand. My daughter's 15 now, but I've been there, so.
Is there a way to kind of vet people at the beginning and ask them what they want to talk about? Because maybe some of them have a question that will be discussed at the meeting. And if they can wait, then you can suggest that they wait until the end of the meeting to talk about it. And the people who are, you know, urgently need to go could speak first. And maybe the public comment is like 10 minutes into the meeting. So if people start, then if people are late to the meeting, they can still speak up in the beginning.
I like that idea. What if we did it as instead of what I said just a minute ago, what if we actually said it, you have to submit in writing? And that way we can also condense what they say potentially if they're tight on time, and that we'll take those questions, you know, we'll take those burning questions if someone has to leave, and if you have to leave, you have to write it in. Like, please write in if you're,
or at least they write down the topics.
Right, and that way we have a sense of it, and then we can say, you know, we'll cover these in the, you know, we are seeing that there's a lot of questions about, you know, grocery. We're going to cover that tonight, or we are going to cover that next meeting, and that way folks know why we're not taking up that comment first. How does that feel?
So none of the people offering public comments actually speak. It's all through the chat. I think that works well. I mean, you know, we've all been on so many webinars, most of us, I think, since the beginning of lockdown, that I find when I'm on WebExes now, people are constantly feeling comfortable entering things in the chat, probably more so than people who would want to speak out. And it is easier to kind of group all the things and realize what rises to the top as the most burning question.
I think that can be okay as long as we have alternate ways of receiving input, whether it's young people who might not feel comfortable composing their words and writing, or, you know, people with disabilities. I just want to make sure people don't feel disenfranchised by having to write thoughts formally.
We could do, it's written comments the first 10 minutes, and then written comments or questions in the first 10 minutes, and then voice comments at the end, and we'll leave another 10 minutes at the end. How does that feel?
That sounds good.
I mean, how loose can this be, Rachel, too? Because I mean, a lot of times you can just play it by ear, essentially. Like, you know, if and we'll probably know ahead of time too if there's going to be a big groundswell of commentary. But I know you're just trying to pin something down, so I'm open to whatever. Like, I just want as many people to be able to be heard, and I think there'll be a lot of opportunity, right? Just in terms of like a website and, you know, different ways to give feedback. all the time outside of the meetings.
Yeah, and I think we can, you're right, Counselor, we can be loose. I think it's just a matter of sort of nailing down that if we have one of those nights where we, really have to talk about the agenda, making sure we have sort of a game plan up front.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I was gonna say something similar of maybe just playing it by ear based on the demand, but maybe, I don't know if there's a way to just like piggybacking off the thought of like sharing what they want to talk about. I don't know if there's a way to say in advance of the meeting, like I'd like to get on the schedule or whatever it is, or if someone wants to talk at the end and there's no time, either there's like an email address or a website, or like, okay, we'll get you in at the beginning of the next one. Just like some way, like finding a way for everyone, but making sure we're being respectful of the 10 minutes. And maybe just letting folks choose, like, do they want to talk or type? I don't know. I feel a little bit strange, like forcing people to submit in writing, but either way, I'm flexible.
Yeah, I think we can give this a try too, right? So what if we try the 10 minutes chat only thing, and we'll see. It'll go, I expect it'll be a while. It'll be a few meetings until we have a ton of people showing up with lots of thoughts. Folks will have to get to know that this group exists, and hopefully we're gonna shift in a minute to talking about March 14th, and hopefully we start to get a lot of engaged folks right away. But it will still take people a little bit to get used to the fact that this group is here and ready to receive their thoughts at any time.
On that note, I'd like to ask a question. I've never been on any of these committees. I've never been politically involved. I just own a business. How much clout do these organizations have in the outcome in the sense of this? Nick had mentioned the taking of the mobile station. That was just something I heard him say. And I know that's part of what the interview was. Are we gonna take this mobile station? Are we gonna do? And the only reason why I'm here, frankly, is because I'm in Gilman Square. I'm concerned about Gilman Square. When I look at renderings of what they want to see there, my building, I can't do business there. They take away my loading dock. They want to change the street. And I know you want to avoid that subject because that's a periphery, but the reality is, if they change the street, and it's been talked about for years, I remember when ABJ was there, Al said, oh, they want to take part of my street because they want to reconfigure Medford and this and that. And then in some of these renderings, they take away my loading dock. I have a piano shop. I need a loading dock. So my question is, I mean, I have to be won over because I speculate in some ways that there's really a game plan in place. And this is a way to cultivate sort of acceptance, and people will go with it. And also to put a stamp on saying, oh, this was approved by the locals. And that's my skepticism about the process, frankly. Tom Galliani, I didn't know he was a city planner. I didn't know that. And I guess guys like him make decisions for the city, or at least give direction, and then it has to be implemented. So my question really is, if we say as a group, we're not taking the global station, leave it alone, would that happen?
So what we're looking for here is sort of that, where are the consensus points and where is there disagreement? And the decision ultimately lies with a few different groups. The decision lies with the Somerville Redevelopment Authority, the Somerville City Council, and then when it comes to details, it'll be the planning board. So those are the groups that ultimately have decision-making authority in their respective realms. The idea of having this group here is that there's a way to sort of shape the decisions that have to be made. And I want to get to the next piece because we have some slides that talk directly about what those decision-making points look like. And the idea is that this group will be feeding a lot of the, pulling all of the neighborhood feedback so that we're shaping each of those steps around what we're hearing. And so that we're getting in at the ground floor with neighborhood feedback, and that it's not coming out of thin air, it's coming out of what we're hearing from the neighborhood. But I will say again, this is part of the narrow focus, right? That the focus here is really what happens on those three pieces of land, right? It's the Holman, what was Holman's building, the green space at the triangle, and the mobile site. The other pieces are parallel and maybe and are going to happen outside, but that's not the subject matter that this group is going to be dealing with. We can certainly point you to the folks who have, you know, more detail on what's happening in those processes, and you're welcome to participate in those as an individual, but this group as a body, the CAC, will be talking about those three sites.
Mhm.
Nick, can you jump to the next set of slides? And we'll try and go through, I want to try and go through this very quickly so we have time to discuss it a little bit more, but I don't want to get to 7 o'clock without having talked about these pieces. And that's, I think, James, really what you were just talking about, sort of what's happening next and where are we going, right? And what are we going to be tackling in this group? So James, or sorry, Nick, can you shift to the next one? So I wanted to show you the timeline that we have put together. What we set out here is, you know, to really get the ball rolling. Part of what's happening is that we're trying to ensure that we're on track to be in position. We want to be in position so that when the T leaves, we have an idea of what's happening. The MBTA is still occupying the Holman site with their construction yard right now. It will be, they won't be done when the green line opens. That site will, they'll still need that for some maintenance, and they've got to sort of work their way out of that space. But we want to be in position to move forward with something as soon as we can after they're wrapped up. So what we laid out here was that we'll get this group together. We'll go through sort of an intro with the neighborhood of where things are and start the conversation about what people want to see and what the priorities are. And that's going to sort of just be, that's our opening night. And the idea being that then as soon as we coming off of that, we'll meet again as a group in late March, and we'll talk about where we go from there. Who did we miss at the meeting? And I'm expecting we're missing high school students at that meeting off the bat. I don't think we're going to get a ton of high school students at an evening meeting that's general public. I think we're going to need a separate meeting with them. And there are going to be other folks that we don't see as part of that conversation. So one of the things is that we're going to look at, you know, what did we hear from people that came to that meeting? And then where do we go from there? What additional engagement do we need to do in the neighborhood to get the folks who didn't make it to that night? From there, we're going to be digging into some of some of the details of these things. And so sort of looking out at these next couple of months, you know, we'll move forward into April and May with tackling some of these things probably outside of those meeting times. And that those outside of the meeting times things may involve whoever is interested in coming and helping out, but it also may just be staff. And those are kind of the things we'll talk about in March to see, you know, where folks have connections and interest, so we can have those deeper conversations, right? And so, Jennifer, I'd love to pull in your friends who have high school students into a conversation. And, you know, for those who are, you know, for everyone, like, how do we get to your neighbors if they don't pay attention, if they're not on the radar of these things? And so that's sort of where we look at moving forward. Nick, can you show the next one? So I wanted to sort of preview for you what we're thinking of that March 14th looks like. Again, thinking of that as like, this is here's where we are today, here's where we've come from in the process, because this doesn't come out of nothing. How did we get to this point? Where are we going next? And then really give a lot of time to having, you know, folks give us that same level of, you know, first pass, what are their priorities that everyone here just gave us earlier tonight? And so, James, what you were sort of mentioning there is that question, right, about are we taking the mobile? That is one of the questions that this group will have to think about. And what we want to lay out for folks are, you know, what are those steps that we're going to have to take decisions or make recommendations. Really, this group is going to make a recommendation, and we're going to kick those recommendations to the council and the redevelopment authority, and they'll have to make some decisions. But we want to make sure that they're making decisions based on as much community input as we can give them. So what we're thinking about for that night again is we'll go through a more in-depth presentation about site background and what, criteria for, challenges of the site. And then we're gonna move into some breakout rooms and hear directly from folks about what their priorities are. The other thing, I've been thinking about is that we probably wanna do a survey for folks who didn't make it to that meeting, but are more digitally engaged, a quick survey that they can do, in 10 minutes on their own time. And let's just, Nick, do you mind just going through them? I want to just run through these real quick and then we can come back to them. So the next piece of that is sort of that big piece that I think I'm hoping everyone here can help us think about is, what do we need to do after that conversation to get more people involved? So is that in person, outside, office hours, like standing on the corner with a table saying, hey, take our survey, tell us what you think? Is that focus groups with the high school, with, I'm thinking of Pearl Street Park, other business owners that we may need to do a focus group that's not in an evening time, but more of a lunchtime or a morning. So this is where I'm hoping everyone here might have some really great ideas and can help us think about how we reach more people. And then Nick, next one. And so I want to pause it there and see, reactions to that sort of next few steps, thoughts on where we go from here. March 14th, that sort of draft that we put together of an agenda.
As far as publicizing the meeting for community involvement, are you going, do you expect us to do some of that? Or?
We would love help with that. We have a flyer that I can send out digitally, and we can get you physical copies if you'd like. If you think your neighbors would prefer physical copies, we can mail you physical copies. We have that right now in English. I'm hoping by the end of tomorrow or latest Monday, I'll have it in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. But also just if you have a Twitter account or Facebook, or you're in Facebook groups, or you're at the library or you run into neighbors and you're like, hey, did you know that there's a meeting on the 14th? That would be lovely.
I had a quick question. I know you referred to engaging with, neighbors for the community meetings. Are you interested in like other members of, like workforce in the area at those meetings if they don't live in that area, or is that not the focus so much?
Yes, please. Yes, everyone.
Got it.
Yeah, the broadest, widest net we can cast of ideas, and then we can, the idea is to synthesize all that, and things hopefully will become clear out of that process. But yeah, the more people and the more you're wanting to do, like in terms of outreach, like it's all volunteer, like Rachel said, so there's no expectation, but certainly, the more people we can reach, the more of a robust process that we'll have, inclusive process. Now I want to speak to James's concerns real quick, just because this came up with some people in the interview too. And so just so James, you understand that like nothing is ever in stone when you have, you have elected officials that basically answer to people. There's no sort of like insider's game, if you will. So, these folks are they work for the city. They're here to sort of, they have their job. We all have our jobs. And the answer is we don't know. It's like if you look up at Star Market, there's still a discussion of going on about, certain parcels up there as to what might happen with them. So these are fluid situations, and really you can use this platform, to make sure that this process feels like, as honest and open outside of our own interests, that, as many as that we're actually listening to folks and we're doing what's best that we think for the city and the community. But that's up to you. You can use this as you wish.
So if we had public attendees, now would be the time we would turn it over to them. There is no one in the audience. I just want to acknowledge that we're checking. Anyone else? General thoughts, questions? We have a copy of the map. Nick, if you mind going to the next one, I think that's the map, just so checking in with folks on the map. And I apologize, this one does not have, I have more labels that I've added on our flyer. So we'll add those as well.
Rachel, I'm gonna jump off, just I need a few minutes to do a couple things before the meeting, but thank you all. I'll see you at the next one, and thank you for your time. Appreciate it. See you.
Let me ask you a real important question. So when the Romans building came down, there was this embossed lion above the door, and they made a big deal about preserving it. Where is it? Is it coming back?
It is in City Hall. So yes, it is still around. It is very carefully wrapped in storage. And then there was also a cast made of it so that it could be replicated if need be.
Right, but it doesn't.
The original is still around.
Though, right? It's going to go back to its home, or is that not necessarily true?
No, it is. That is one of, there are very few like fixed things that have to happen at the site, and that is one of them.
It was a big deal. I don't know if you know, when they took it down, it became a big newsworthy, and they did it so, diligently. They wanted to make sure they didn't break it and whatever, and they got it, and it was just pretty cool to get it back to Gilman Square where it belongs. I guess that could be at the top of the monument that is proposed for the center of the town, of the square.
Yeah, I think that'll be really interesting, right? Does it live on in a open space setting where it's like, yeah, right. Like, is it a monument? Is it live on a building? Is it, does it get replicated because we can replicate it with the 3D, with the model we have? Like, should there be like 20 of them? As we get down the road into details, we'll have.
Yeah, I don't see no replication. You got one, you got the original. That was just in case they broke the other one, because it was like a big deal. They thought they were gonna, but if they put it back in Gilman Square, because it's always lived there, I think that would be a good tribute to what used to be there. But of course, this is not a very big deal, but a fun deal to deal with. It could be part of a park or something, I suppose. But And do we know who Gilman was? Was he a good, upstanding citizen, or do we find out that he
was a mayor, I think, wasn't he? I thought I saw his picture once when I was getting something at City Hall. He was a mayor in like 1890 or something like that.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I don't know. Are people aware that the building I'm in used to be a college? Before it was Knights of Malta, which was like a Knights of Columbus kind of, thing, organization. That's what it was built as. But then immediately it became Winter Hill Business School. And then soon after that, it became Fisher College. And I don't know if you know Fisher College, which still exists in Boston. They actually used to have trustee meetings at my space because it was their beginnings. And I'm talking like 1913 and 19. It was a business day school of teaching typewriting and typing and all like that. And so they would always come by for a little historic visit, and they were really cool to me. They'd always send me all kinds of Fisher swag for thanking me for letting them use the building. But that's the history of that building right there. So, and obviously that, I think that is going to be and should be a, focal point of what goes on in this renovation of the area.
I want to read out a couple of comments from Michelle. I realized she emailed me with a couple of notes since she can't speak. So Michelle just said that the timing does work for her, and the public comment at the beginning and end she's comfortable with as well. And then the other thing she asked, which I think is a question for everyone potentially, she said, can we get digital copy of the flyer? Share it on social media. And yes, Michelle, we can definitely get you that. And I will send the English flyer to everyone by email tomorrow. And then as soon as we've got the Spanish and Portuguese, I'll send it your way as well. I just want to check in. Jack, Diana, Brittany, any thoughts?
I have a question and a suggestion, or question. You were looking for other ideas of how to involve the public, and I wonder if there's going to be like a big opening ceremony for the Union Square tea. Maybe we could be there with a table or something, because probably the people who can't wait to have Gilman open will all go to Union Square and get excited, and maybe we could have a table there or something. And then, I don't know how, I know we signed up for a 2-year process, but you also want to get public involvement really soon. So I don't know if like July or August, if that's too far off, but assuming they have some kind of opening eventually for Gilman Square and everything, then of course we should be there. I mean, that's probably so obvious, I shouldn't even say it, but it would be great if we could be there to get people interested in what's happening with the square.
Yeah, that is a great point. So what we've sort of been anticipating is that March 14th again is that first meeting. And then we'll do a round of engagement that's sort of really at this very open date. And then what we're going to do is we want to have a second big workshop so we will have HRNA, our economic team. They're going to do in this first meeting, they're going to just sort of introduce themselves and what they've been working on and the research they've been doing. And then we'll have them back for a second meeting where they're going to go through some of the more details about what they've been finding and trying to react to the ideas people have brought forward, right? And sort of get a sense of like, okay, if whatever folks have said that they're really excited about, they're going to do some more research to understand where is the market on that topic, right? What's the, how might we write this into our requests for, as in our search for a development partner and our search for, and our then request for what we want to see in the project? How do we translate what people have given us for ideas into language for that? And so they'll be helping us with that process. And so the idea is that workshop 2, they'll have a lot more to say. And that way there's, so July is certainly a great time because we'll still be well into the process of collecting ideas. And, even as they go forward, we're going to want people reacting to what they find, right? And that's sort of like, there's the first one is broad, open, what are your priorities? And set meeting 2 when we have HRNA with us, with the community. That's sort of all right, here's what we're finding. What are those trade-offs that, we might be willing to make? What are those top priority items and what are those less top priority but still important?
I'm wondering about when will we have information about what's logistically possible? I mean, somebody mentioned, oh, what if we put the YMCA there? Well, will the YMCA fit in that kind of a logistic? So obviously before we could be given all these great ideas, but maybe some of it just won't work because of the landscape and the size limitations. When do we have that information to know what we can sort of discuss as to possibilities?
Yeah, it's a great question too. I think what we're thinking is that's sort of between March 14th and whatever that second meeting is, we're doing a lot of those investigations. And so even already tonight, we heard a couple people who said, the YMCA is definitely something they want to see explored with this location. And so we can take that to the team that's working with the YMCA and say, hey, have you had these conversations? How far along are they in their process? Because they have a whole process that they have to go through too to understand what they need for their future building.
Rachel, just as another idea for engaging the community, Somerville Open Studios will be happening in person this year. So I will definitely have things going on. I'll have the flyer up in my studio and I'll make sure Matt Oyster is kind of plastered with it. But I obviously won't be able to be doing anything outreachy outside of my studio during Open Studios because I'll be in there. But if you guys wanted to do something, you could talk to Jane again, because that was, I'll admit, the block party part in the studio parking lot was pretty awesome. But yeah, so that's another opportunity is Somerville Open Studios.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, we have a couple events this spring that I think would also benefit outside of that. One question I had that's just around the project areas. So I know that the bridge is something that is another parallel conversation that potentially in the future could get programmed, potentially could be open space or green space, depending on what direction it goes in. When we do want to get a sense holistically about what the community wants for these areas. No one is, I mean, I don't think we want specific feedback about who wants green space on what corner of the mobile lot, or who wants, you know, open space where on the Homan site. So I guess what I'm asking is, if the community is thinking about it holistically, is it fair to say that we're also going to be receiving that feedback holistically? I'm looking at this map and I'm like, that's, you know, you have areas that are selected as being the project area, but I don't know that the community is thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we can sort of see, I think what we'll have to sort up, and I liked where Casey was going earlier with this idea of like, how do we keep track of all the notes and the feedback? And there's, you know, often there's a way of sort of structuring note taking where you have a parking lot. And the idea is that things go in the parking lot that are not immediate to the subject, but the parking lot are still important ideas that shouldn't be lost, right? And you're holding them there. So that until they get to the right venue, right? And so that we can keep an eye on those comments that are coming in. And James, I think, you know, the same idea that like what you were sort of saying earlier, if there's ideas for the parcels neighboring you on the other side of the street, maybe those ideas, we sort of we have a way of keeping track of them and then filtering them out to the right teams, because those are going to be parallel processes at different times.
So there's another part I guess I'm hearing too, which is like, if a cafe could potentially be on the triangle, but a cafe can't be on the bridge, right? Then as we collect information from the community about coffee, since we're probably heavy drinkers, a lot of us, and it comes up, it'll be important to report that and share that, but it's only until downstream of our collection process and conversation that like someone, when thinking about, you know, where do we need coffee shops, like that we're not part of the process in this group. Is that what I'm hearing as well?
Yeah, that it will go to it'll end up being its own process just because of the timeline is so different. This is something that we'll be talking about sort of on the internal city team and with the city council and the SRA, that there's the structure for which this exists. Like, can we expand it? And I don't know if that's true. There's some technicalities that we have to sort out. But if we were to expand the scope to say this group is actually going to include that, we would talk with you all first, of course, before we get there. But you know, for now, we sort of said keep the blinders on this narrow area, with an understanding that, you know, over time we'll have to sort of assess as other things come up.
I have a question kind of going right along on that, is two actually. So Rachel, are on the staff side, on the city side, the various city leadership of these different projects, they are talking to each other, right? They're comparing notes. Because I have, you know, I work for the city of Boston for 17 years. I've seen things go. And so I just want to make sure that's not happening here, because it's, yes, I understand that things have to happen differently because they're on different timelines. You've got the, you know, physical construction, street construction, et cetera. But these things, as Ben is saying, do inform each other, and they're going to have to reconnect at some point. Could we, speaking of parking lots, as a parking lot item, like could there be at some point when it makes sense, when enough of these projects have moved along far enough, for there to be a holistic presentation by the various project teams that does look at it as, okay, we have the street part, we have the bridge part, we have the parcels part, we have some other stuff going on. Here's what it looks like as a single, you know, 30,000 foot view of that, of the whole thing. Could we just make sure that that happens as soon as it can, so that the neighborhood can see it in those terms?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think I will look and see what level of detail we have to maybe be able to include that already for the 14th. We may not have that much detail on a lot of things, right? There's a lot of the aspects are just kind of on pause or anticipated down the line. But that's a good idea.
Hey, what is
Yeah.
the status? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You done?
No, I was just saying, like, yeah, no, I get it that it
What is
may
the
not.
status of the mobile station? As far as the owner and being able to do something with it since he does own it, or does the city, once they got their eye on for their purpose, eminent domain, does that sort of put him in a holding pattern and he can't do anything?
So with the mobile site, and Nick, I just want to make sure we're seeing your screen just in case. So with the mobile site, so there's a few ways this could go, right? And so that's still a TBD. If the city were to acquire it through eminent domain, through an urban renewal plan, there's a several step process to get to that point. There are very strict standards at the state level that dictate how they are compensated. And that's both the property owner and the business that's located there. They are engaged. The owners of the property have been engaged. I'm still working on connecting with the business a bit more. I've left notes, but I have to do a little bit more work on my end to connect with them. But they're, going forward, there's a few ways that it could happen, right? So that's one option, right, that the city acquires it. If the owner there wants to develop it separately, and that has come up in the past, there are opportunities to look at various options as partnerships. And so there's that route also. And then the third route, of course, is that they stay completely separate and don't engage with each other at all.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt that one is ultimately where we're going to go because the site is so complex, and that their needs might benefit them to work with the city around what the edge looks like. But we'll have to have that chat as we get further into this.
But so that essentially you're saying his hands are pretty much tied until the city decides what they want to do with it.
Pretty much. One of the things that came up in the last set of conversations around this last year with the zoning and massing study was this idea that Richdale Ave, creating some sort of connection through from Richdale Ave into the Holman site where we'll have some sort of civic space. And so that also constrains the idea. If that's really a key idea that the neighborhood wants to see move forward, then that would further constrain the ability to do something without cooperating with the city.
There it is.
Would they be interested in taking the triangle spot so that the Holman space is less open, so that the two parcels join together? It's almost like a like in terms of area.
Yeah, and thank you. That's a good question. I want to just catch what Casey said. So yes, we are at past time, but it's 7:11, so folks do need to jump off. It's quite all right. I can stay on a few more minutes as well to answer any last pieces, but feel free to head out if you need to. Yeah, that is an interesting one. If there was a swap, you're sort of saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way that would work is not dissimilar from some of these other ideas where there's a that would have to be formalized, right? And so the process timing, that could be a result, right? If we go through this and we say, are they interested in engaging with us as a redevelopment partner? That's how it would work out. They would have to be one of our partners in redeveloping this whole area. So we'll see.
Also seems like there might be a little bit of remediation because of if you had a gas station, there's probably a lot of things to be cleaned up there.
Yeah, and that's the other piece too, right? Is thinking about the environmental aspects, that it may be harder to, redevelop the mobile without assistance. But what we're aiming with is this idea is that the first meeting is really that everyone think big. What are they really excited about? Because we'll know more about whether or not we need to engage the mobile site based on that, right? And as we learn more about people's interests, we'll have more details. If we're talking about YMCA, we need to understand, as some of the folks were saying, like what the scale looks like for that kind of facility. So we will dig in further.
Determined at a later date, I guess. Well, thank you for having me. Good night, one and all, and we'll see you in a month.
And the 14th, if anyone, if you folks can make it.
Have a good night, all.
Bye, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone, for your time tonight.
Bye, thank you.
Nick, thank you for being our guide.
Sure.
Thank- I struggle with this every time.